Okay, we'll start with this in women's welterweight news. Reigning IBF welterweight champion Natasha Jonas ready and willing to face Mikaela Mayer next.
Mikaela wants this fight for obvious reasons. For her, it would be a world title opportunity, but the feeling is mutual. Natasha is receptive to the match as well.
She's got no problem facing Mayer next, as long as it takes place before the end of the year. I want it. Mikaela Mayer wants it. I think the fans want it. Why not? It's just the particulars that we've got to work out. Let's do it. I'm all down for next. If next is before the end of this year, then that's fine, Jonas said to Sky Sports. In 2022, Jonas moved up by several weight classes and captured 3 world titles at junior middleweight. She has since moved down to welterweight,
in effect becoming a 2-division champion.
It seems that her desire to face Mikaela comes with a stipulation that it has to be before the end of this year. You wonder if this won't be Natasha Jonas's final year in the sport of boxing as a pugilist as opposed to a pundit, because she does do commentator work on Sky Sports.
She is 39 years old, even though she doesn't look it.
Mayer would like that fight to take place next. I think that we're both in a time in our careers when we're looking for big fights. We both have solidified our names in this sport. We've both done a bunch in the amateurs as well as the pros. I want it, she wants it, she wants it. There's no reason why we can't make the fight happen. I ideally would want it next, Mayer said. I'm ready for that fight against Natasha Jonas. I've been preparing my body to go up. It's a big jump going from 130 up to 147. It takes time to undo what I did to keep my body down at that weight for so many years.
Questions that need answers.
It was very recently announced that Amendia Serranio's next fight, her mandated WBO title defense against her WBO mandatory challenger, Danila Ramos, would be billed as a 12-round match. 12 3-minute rounds.
We saw some fighters and some champions in support of 12 3-minute rounds in women's boxing matches.
Chantel Cameron, Sinicia Estrada, Yo Costavalle, unbeaten up-and-comer and amateur standout Christina Cruz.
They're for it.
But what about Mikaela and what about Natasha? If they end up fighting either later on this year or early next year, will they push the same way that Amanda pushed for 12 3-minute rounds? The feeling isn't unanimous, you understand. It's not unanimous across the board. Some are in favor of 12 3-minute rounds, and some aren't.
If Mikaela and Natasha want to fight for 12 3-minute rounds, it seems that the IBF won't stand in their way. You will notice that the IBF didn't give Amanda any problems.
They're not standing in the way of progress the way, say, the World Boxing Council is. In truth, none of the other alphabets, the WBA, the WBO, or the IBF, are averse to 12 3-minute rounds in women's boxing matches. It really only seems to be the WBC. A fight between Mikaela and Natasha, it would be for the IBF.
So they don't have to worry about them.
Some want 12 3-minute rounds, but I wonder that Natasha and Mikaela won't tell themselves, why fight for more time if it doesn't come with more money? Understand that
the number of minutes in a round don't affect what the fighters get paid. It has next to no bearing on fight purses or marquee value.
In the greater scheme of things, it doesn't. You don't get paid by the minute.
If you push for 12 3-minute rounds. That's 36 minutes.
Just 4 minutes shy of 40 minutes, which is double the time women's boxing matches take. Currently, it's at around 20 minutes.
10 2-minute rounds.
If you bump it up to 12 rounds, 3 minutes per round, that's close to double the time.
Some view it as a safety issue, an efficacy issue. Some view it as a quality control issue. But in some ways, it's a fiscal issue. Are you going to work for more time for the same money?
You're going to fight for additional time for what is not additional money.
I wonder if Natasha and Michaela are going to push for 12 3-minute rounds.
Natasha Jonas has proven herself to be a shrewd businesswoman over time, not just a capable boxer, but a business-savvy boxer as well. And it's hard to imagine that she would push for more time if it doesn't get her more money.
We'll see.
After having fought for 10 2-minute rounds the entirety of her career, Natasha Jonas, who's 39, does she want to bump it up?
We'll see.
I think that there are some legitimate questions there that need answers, but I do expect that the fight will happen. I do expect the fight between Michaela and Natasha. I expect it will take place because it's the most sensible and sensical fight for both, and it's within arm's reach.
They both want it.
When could we see a potential clash between Inoue and Marlon Tapales for undisputed super?
I hope this year. We're trying to put it together for this year.
That bit of it we knew. That bit of it we knew already. That Inoue means to become an undisputed champion at a second weight, though a champion at a fourth weight overall before this year is out. Opposite the ring, the only unified champion at this weight, the only other unified champion, Marlon Tapales.
Right.
And that he means to campaign as a super bantamweight for a good enough amount of time. He's not going to move up right away, and why should he? He literally just got there in his last fight. The future of Naoya Inoue, provided he makes his way past Marlon Tapales later on this year, might include Janriel Casimero,
Luis Neri,
MJ Akhmadaliev. You're looking at approximately 3 to 4 fights. 3 to 4.
For a guy who fights 2 times a year on average, that's roughly 1.5, maybe 2 years worth of fights.
2 years worth of fights in the super bantamweight division where Naoya Inoue just arrived. Though given his marquee value and what he can afford to pay his opponents because of his own marquee value, he's garnering attention all over the place. He's garnered the attention of reigning IBF featherweight champion Luis Lopez of Mexico, who's already started posting graphics to his Instagram stories, campaigning for that fight, even though Inoue isn't on the verge of moving up. Not yet.
Inoue's name has been tacked on to potential Luis Lopez fight, potential Robeisy Ramirez fights, as high as a fight at lightweight with Gervonta Davis.
But that's not the least bit realistic. A Robeisy Ramirez or Luis Lopez fight. On the top-ranked side of things, since they're both top-ranked fighters, that's a lot more realistic, even though we're not on the eve of that. And you will notice that Luis Lopez, he's nipping this thing in the bud early. He's starting to call out Naoya Inoue now, even though we all know Naoya's not about to move up yet.
I don't like it.
That Luis Lopez is keeping such a close eye on the action as far as super bantamweights go, but he doesn't seem to keep that same energy for his fellow champion at his own weight, Robeisy Ramirez, who holds the WBO title. Understand something.
What?
Immediately after Lee Wood won back the WBA title that was taken from him by Mauricio Lara in their rematch.
Lee Wood won the second fight. He wins the rematch. He gets a WBA title. And Luis Lopez says he would like to fight him. He'd be willing to fight him in the United Kingdom.
Which I didn't take issue with at the time, and I don't take issue with it now. If he wants to unify with one of the other champions at the weight, I'm all for it. The issue is that Lee Wood's with Matchroom.
He's not saying that the fight can't happen because Lee Wood is with Matchroom. It can.
But you're looking at Matchroom fighters, Matchroom's champions. You're looking at super bantamweights. I don't see Luis Lopez expressing the willingness to face Robeisy Ramirez, who's right there on the top-ranked side of things, the same as him. I don't see Luis Lopez expressing an interest in facing Robeisy like he expressed an interest in facing Lee Wood, or like he's expressing an interest in facing Naoya Inoue. In theory, the Robeisy Ramirez fight should be easier to make.
I don't see him calling out Robeisy like he called out Lee Wood. I don't see him cooking up posters for a Robeisy-Ramirez fight the way he did for an Naoya Inoue fight.
I don't see it. What I see is that he doesn't have the energy for Robeisy that he has for some other fighters, even though, in theory, the Robeisy-Ramirez fight would be easier to make. They're both top-ranked fighters.
Both champions.
I feel like Lopez and his team, for all they've accomplished so far, looking impressive in doing so, they're using other fighters,
other fights,
to circumvent a fight, the most logical fight to make between themselves and Robeisy-Ramirez. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to spend the next year and a half, 2 years, calling out a guy who's at 122?
Is that the plan?
You're at 126.
Even if he can't be faulted for pursuing the biggest fight, the biggest payday, which would be a Naoya Inoue fight, and I understand that, Inoue's not on the eve of moving up. He just got to 122. It's a waste of time doing that now. Why don't you call Robeisy, see what he says?
Maybe you unify titles, take out the competition so that when Inoue moves up, he has no other option but to fight you.
I'll be honest, it looks to me like Luis Lopez has an aversion to facing Robeisy-Ramirez, even though it's a sensible fight to make.
Upstairs in the men's welterweight division, Terence Crawford says that he's open to facing Charlo at 168 if he beats Canelo, which to me is a different proposition because Jermell does have a different build than Canelo Alvarez. He's not eye level to Terence Crawford.
He is a taller fighter. He is a longer fighter.
My sight is on, the big fights, Crawford said on the 3-knockdown rule. I believe if Canelo beats Charlo, that's the next fight to be made. If me and Spence, not the next one, I think that's the next fight to be made, Canelo. And after that, Spence and I can fight, and then I can ride off into the sunset.
We know that Spence has since activated his rematch clause.
Because I don't see how big of a fight with Charlo and Crawford will be coming off a loss. I never fought an opponent coming off a loss. If you look at all my career, I never fought an opponent coming off a loss because it wouldn't be meaningful to me or my career to beat someone that just lost. And then that opens the door for the media to say, oh, he just lost, so you beat a damaged goods fighter. Or man, he was just fighting for the money.
Yeah.
If Jermell wins, then of course me and him can get in the ring and I can move up to 168 and fight him because he's going to lose a title at 154 to Tim Tszyu once the bell rings. I think that's bullshit.
Tim Tszyu would disagree.
I think he should be allowed to move up and fight Canelo and still keep all of his belts at 154 because Canelo moved up and fought guys and was still able to keep his belts. I do not know what the situation is with that. That's none of my business. I'm just speaking from the outside.
There are differences.
When Canelo moved up to 175 as an undisputed champion at 168, it didn't take him over a year's time to return to action like it's taking Charlo.
He lost to Dimitri in May of last year, and by May of the following year, this year, he was already in the ring with his mandatory challenger, John Ryder.
He fought Dimitri in May of last year, squeezed in a fight with Gennady Golovkin in September, then followed up by satisfying his mandatory challenger in May of this year.
With Jermell, it's different. It's already been over a year's time since he fought.
The order from the WBO had already came down. Before he decided to move up in weight and fight Canelo, the order for him to fight Tim Tszyu had already come down.
And he ignores it.
He ignored it. That's what makes those two situations different. I don't think it's hard, but at the same time, rules is rules. And if they do decide to take his belt when he fights Canelo, then I would be open to challenging the winner.
Even if it's Jermell.
Jermell is singing a somewhat different tune. Jermell says, I've got Canelo to worry about. He being Terence Crawford, wants to bite off more than he can chew.
Sounds like Jermell's not that receptive to that fight.
I think that Terence Crawford could be on the marketing point Charlo said of Crawford's callouts. He could be using it that way, because I heard what y'all were saying. But Terence Crawford's problem is he was never with the right people before this. He just got with the PBC. He just signed over and got with the right program. That's why was able to make the Errol Spence fight. You know what I'm saying? Now that he gets his feet wet a little bit, and he's liking the promotion, and he's liking all of that, now he wants to bite off a little bit more than he can chew, you know? I've got Canelo to worry about at 168, so why the hell am I going to be worried about Terence Crawford? We'll talk about 154 whenever we get done with this Canelo shit.
Empty promises.
How many times have I told you? You don't go to 168, make a career-high purse, win or lose, so that you can then kill yourself boiling back down to 154. That's just not likely.
You tell a guy we'll talk when I come back to 154. That's just another way of saying we're not going to talk because I'm not coming back to 154.
We can't even talk about 154 because you may have to meet me at another weight, because my boy Errol is going to 154 and my brother may be moving up to 168 permanently, Charlo said. I might set up at 160 or spend my career somewhere else. I've been at 154 a long time. I only been in 2 weight divisions and I conquered that whole division. What else do I gotta prove at that division?
At 154.
This is what I've been telling you. It's not likely that Jermell returns.
He's holding out hope that Errol Spence Jr. can take care of business for him.
He says he's confident that Spence can win the Crawford rematch because that weight, that's just not Errol's weight anymore. Yet another Heymanite who's pointing to weight as the main component that worked against Errol Spence Jr., which is
just a veiled attempt to take away from Terrence's victory. That's all that is.
My boy Errol's got to fight him again, Charlo told $1 million worth of game. My boy Errol is going to get his rematch.
So many delusional, wide-eyed optimists are hoping that at 154 pounds, the fight will go differently.
So what has my attention here, since we've already broached that subject so many times, is that it seems like Jermell is holding out hope that he won't have to deal with Terrence Crawford, that perhaps someone else might deal with him, since now Terrence has set his sights on him.
You know, he trained his ass off. That weight is just not his weight no more. I don't want to give no excuses, said Jermell Charlo, but that's exactly what he's doing.
As much as you guys are hanging on weight, sounds like an excuse to me, trying to excuse Errol Spence Jr. being dominated by Terrence, who you said was going to get stopped, who you said was going to get dominated. And that's not all Jermell said.
That's not all, folks.
Jermell Charlo has said he wants to see Terrence Crawford versus Jaron Boots Ennis. I'm putting Boots in there with Crawford. I want to see Boots and Crawford go at it. That'd be nice. Leave us alone.
Him and Canelo.
Jermell Charlo's tune has changed in a little over a month's time, because it was a little over a month ago when Jermell said on his own Instagram post that they can see about doing the fight between him and Terrence Crawford after Errol gets his rematch. Now the recommendation he's making is that after that rematch, Crawford fight Jaron Boots Ennis instead. He wants to be left alone.
Where before he was saying they could settle up after a Spence rematch, now what he wants to do is pawn him off on someone else. It sounds a lot to me like he doesn't want to deal with Terrence Crawford.
There are many different ways to communicate confidence and strength. Leave me alone is not one of them. Changing your tune.
You said you'd be willing to fight him after the Spence rematch if he beats him again.
You changed your tune. Now you're recommending that he fight someone else, that he fight Jaron Boots Ennis, when Jaron Ennis is at 147 and Terrence is en route to 154. The entire boxing community knows that.
Jermell knows that.
There are a lot of different ways to communicate confidence and strength, and that's not one of them. What that communicates is indecision and indecisiveness.
You didn't mention Boots for no reason.
Shortly after Errol Spence Jr. got his ass kicked by Terrence Crawford, you saw a lot of people pouring that effort and pouring that same energy they were pouring into Errol into Jaron Boots Ennis. He's the next souped-up hype job they want to prop up to be some kind of boogeyman.
Do you think that's harsh?
I think a lot of people for a long while now have been trying to prop up Jaron Boots Ennis as the anti-Crawford, and Jermell Charlo is one among them. I don't actually think Jaron Ennis is a bad fighter, but I think
their enthusiasm is premature. Jaron Boots Ennis ain't done nothing and beat nobody to get the reception that he's getting. How much credit did they deprive Terrence Crawford of?
Whilst lavishing praise on Jaron Boots Ennis for beating guys like Sergey Lipinets and Thomas Dulorme.
The faded husk of Thomas Dulorme.
That's what I think. I think in a lot of ways Jermell is using Jaron Boots Ennis as a shield, the way that Spence fans were using him as a shield.
That's what I think.